Their constitutions grant NTUC the power to appoint members of the Council of Advisors who play a key role in overseeing the actions of the executive committees. The Council of Advisors has the authority to suspend the executive committees elected by members. This mirrors the power the NTUC exerts over many of the affiliated unions, limiting their independence. Furthermore, the Registrar of PWAs...
If I may, Mr. Speaker, a point of order. I listened very carefully to Mr. Giam's speech for the first 10 minutes. I humbly and respectfully submit to the Chair that the first 10 minutes had nothing to do with the platform workers' bill that that is being debated today. It was predominantly an attack against the NTUC. And that is why the honourable member, halfway through his speech, says, I now turn my focus to the bill, when actually the focus should have been from the onset about the bill. So I want to raise this as a point of order. This is not part of the bill, and Mr. Giam's speech about attacking the NTUC, in my humble view, in my capacity as a member of this House, is completely off tangent, with respect.
My proposals to ensure the independence of workers and PWAs are not aimed at diminishing their work, but rather to enhance their ability to advocate freely for the workers they represent. By ensuring that unions and PWAs are not beholden to any political party or the government, unionists will have the autonomy to fully pursue the interests of their members, challenge government policies that do not align with workers' needs, and introduce innovative solutions to improve wages and working conditions. Ultimately, an independent union movement will not only strengthen the labour movement, but also create a dynamic and resilient workforce for Singapore's future. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Giam, I just request that you refer to Standing Order, Section 50, and this is with reference to the relevance of the topics that you talk about. And this also applies to every member. Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, just to put on record, I think the remarks you made at the end with respect are critical, because I distinctly recall in this House, not too long ago, I believe it was a budget speech, and the Honourable Member, Mr. Chris de Souza, did not speak about the budget, but went on to advise the government or the PAP to make a decision on the 4G leadership. So I think the salutary message you provided at the end is important, because it cannot be just accusations made at the opposition, but I think some PAP members ought to reflect on themselves.
Mr. de Souza.
I'm grateful to the Leader of the Opposition for mentioning my name. We are debating a specific bill today with several provisions and several clauses. And I think it is completely our aim to get this bill passed in order to protect platform workers. So we have a bill, we have an agenda today. When it comes to a budget debate, right, the members have free rein to discuss what they want. In addition to the budget, the objectives, the values, the future they want to see for Singapore. And at that time, I was concerned because we had a position that there would be a 4G leadership transition. DPM Heng, in his selflessness, decided to step aside, and I was concerned for the country that we needed leadership. So I stood here and gave one of the most difficult speeches of my political career, which is that I had hoped and hope that the 4G leadership would come together and choose a man or a woman to take us forward. How is that not in concert with the budget budget is finance. It is also about different education, ministries, finance, defense, and all of that. But without key leadership, budgets are nothing. So what I said, I humbly say, when I made that speech, I think in 2021 or 2022, I can't remember, about needing to choose a solid, formidable 4G leader, was completely consistent with what we were debating for in terms of passing the budget. An attack on the NTUC for, I think, 70% of the speech of Mr. Giam on a bill that is meant to advance the welfare, the prospects, the future, the protection, the medical care, the CPF of platform workers is no comparison. That is political opportunism. And I state this as a matter of principle, not as a matter of politics. I put principle first before politics, Mr. Singh.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I think the record will speak for itself, and I think Mr. Giam has explained why his subject matter, which Mr. Chris de Souza has taken objection to, is connected to the bill. Thank you.
Mr. de Souza.
Most certainly, Mr. Speaker, sir, the record will speak for itself, and I enjoin Mr. Singh, respectable leader of the opposition, and Mr. Giam to pick up my speech of 2021 or 2022, I can't remember, it was during COVID, where I had made the position very clear that we need to choose the 4G leader. So the record will speak for itself. And please, members, you can make your own decision whether what I said is in concert with the budget that we were meant to pass, and what Mr. Giam has said today, the honourable member, is in concert with an attack on the NTUC or support on the bill. The record will speak for itself. Last year, through the 4 budgets, we assisted many Singaporeans in their time of need. I believe this year's budget is a continuation of that spirit. That is, timely aid to citizens and companies in need. Sir, Singaporeans have risen up to the occasion and taken ownership and responsibility in this crisis, helping their neighbours and friends, and giving to those who need it more than themselves. I believe that COVID-19 has shown the world the best of Singapore and how we have stood together to overcome. The pandemic has revealed our common humanity. It is with this spirit of a common humanity and our common identity as Singaporeans that I wish to speak today. My first point is how we should strive towards becoming one united Singaporean family. Multiculturalism is a significant ingredient in our Singapore tapestry. Unity does not mean homogeneity. In fact, as we continue to embrace multiculturalism and diversity, and the more we understand the differences and the richness of each culture, the tighter our social fabric becomes. We do value the diversity in our ethnic heritages. The self-help groups such as CDAC, SINDA, Mendaki, and the Eurasian Association play important roles in keeping ethnic heritages alive in modern-day Singapore. It shows that we value the different cultures inherent in our society and aid each subsequent generation to become familiar with the traditions and outlook of each ethnic group. These self-help groups help their individual communities while also carrying out joint interracial events. This helps foster both the bonds within each individual community and also the bonds in the larger Singaporean context. Another example is the ethnic integration program within HDB estates. I support this as it is in line with the spirit of enhancing ties between people of various ethnic backgrounds who become neighbours and who then share common environments. I believe that as we continue to strengthen and understand different ethnic communities and as our diverse culture and heritage becomes more and more a part of Singapore, race will become less and less a factor in evaluating a person. In fact, I would dare say that race matters less in the minds of Singaporeans, especially those who are younger, in comparison to their nationality, that of being Singaporean. I think the identity marker in my age group of Singaporeans and younger is Singaporean first and ethnicity second. But what does that mean for politics? I think that means that when choosing a candidate to lead the government, the choice must be the best man for the job, regardless of race. Instead of being evaluated based on race, we can evaluate based on more robust factors, such as the person's character, abilities, values, and experience. Politics is about leadership. In my personal view, ceteris paribus, when it comes to leading the government, I think it should be the best man for the job, regardless of race. So if there is a Singaporean Chinese candidate of the right age and with the right character and the right skill set, making him the best man for the job, he should be chosen for the job. If there is a Singaporean of a minority race of the right age and with the right character and right skill set to be the best man for the job, then he should be chosen for the job. Leadership within the government comes with years of experience and years of being an elected member within this House. It could easily be 20 years before an elected member becomes a Prime Minister. And by that time, the familiarity and connection that people would have with the minister would count for more than just his race. COVID-19 has shown more than ever the need for good government and good leadership of and in government. I know many people, my age and younger, do want the best man to lead the government regardless of race. Some may say I am being overly idealistic to the discount of pragmatism. I beg to differ. Why? Because the very idea of a multiracial, multicultural Singapore was an ideal, an aspiration born literally from the tears and the sweat of our founding fathers. And inch by inch, year by year, we grow closer to making it a reality. Are we there yet? I believe we have some way to go. But my wish for Singapore is that one day, perhaps when deciding the 5G or 6G Prime Minister, that race is not used as a trump card or a disqualifying criterion. We are too small a nation to discount a man based on his race. This is my view, based on my personal belief. Mr. Speaker, I hope this House can understand the point I am getting at. I am not saying race is not important. Neither am I saying race should be used to dichotomize and polarize. I am firmly of the view that multiracial Singapore is important, and we should not dilute the significance of race and what it can bring to the table. In fact, it brings such a rich tapestry, such that many parts of the world can see themselves in us, in Singapore. But when it comes to leadership of government, we should not discount anybody because of their race but instead evaluate the candidate based on who is best for the job. I hold this belief. I know many in my age group and younger hold this belief firmly too. Maybe this will happen in 15 to 20 years' time, when the party holding the majority of this House chooses the 5G or 6G PM of who the 5G or 6G PM should be. However, it being 20 years away should not deter us from having such conversations now. I do not want any room for my speech to be misinterpreted. So let me say categorically that I do believe that our Prime Minister is the best man for the job, and I also do believe that the 4G ministers have chosen the best man for the job to eventually lead their team. So nothing in my speech should distract from those conclusions. The point I am making in this speech is that it should be the best man for the job regardless of race, or dare I say the best person for the job regardless of race, for I don't see why a woman with outstanding leadership ability should be discounted. Look at Angela Merkel, a woman leading a solid government. Singapore is small. If we were to straitjacket our perception of talent, we could very well lose out on the best person for the job. Being a Singaporean is the key identity marker in Singaporeans of my age group and younger. The second identity marker, that of race, comes after the first identity marker, which is being Singaporean. I mean this personally. It comes from deep within, and I would like to share a story that speaks to the heart of these beliefs of mine. My wife and I have 4 children aged between 1 and 12 years old. Our second daughter was adopted. Her ethnic lineage is pure Chinese, and we adopted her at birth in Singapore. What happened was that there was a young Singaporean Chinese woman who found out she was pregnant. She decided to carry on with her pregnancy, deliver the baby, and put the baby up for adoption. She got in touch with a Christian charity who helped place babies with adoptive families. My wife and I had put our names down with the charity as potential adoptive parents. And then we received the phone call. My wife and I prayed about it and took the leap of faith in adopting this little Singaporean Chinese baby girl. Today, my daughter is completely part of our family. She is the younger sister to our first daughter and dotes on her 2 younger siblings. All our children are loved and treated equally and are being brought up first and foremost as Singaporeans first, and secondly, as Singaporean Eurasians. So what then is race? If it is merely defined by virtue of blood lineage, our second daughter would be Chinese. But if it was also defined by culture, then living experience would play a part too. My second daughter put up the Chinese New Year decorations made up of Hong Paos around our home this year. But during the Christmas season, she would eat all the Eurasian fare on the dining table, including suji cake, and even ask for seconds. To preempt her wondering why she looked a little different from her older sister, my wife and I told her when she was very young, "You came from your tummy mummy, but you were born in our hearts." It is the same way I view Singapore. We are all given life from our mother's wombs, but we are all born with Singapore in our hearts. So when I say being Singaporean is the preeminent identity marker of a citizen, and that race is a secondary identity marker, I believe that firmly. So there is no binary lens with which one should view race, such that race completely doesn't matter or always matters to the discount of everything else. It is a spectrum that is a continuum within which my daughter of Singaporean Chinese lineage and living in a Singaporean Eurasian home is completely comfortable. Race is an asset to make the tapestry of Singapore culture richer and our identity and our identity fuller. So let it not divide us, but unite us in always choosing the right person to lead our government. The next point I want to make relates to adoption, a point which I have shared, I care deeply about. If we can create an environment in which couples who are unable to have their own children, but who would love to have children and want to adopt, can be placed in touch with the database of prospective mothers in Singapore, wanting to offer their babies for adoption, this would benefit both parties. But for this to happen, the pregnant woman must be told of this option. I have had discussions with MSF over many years, and I hope they will close the loop with me and inform me how the counseling for pregnant women to ensure that they are aware that adoption is a good and feasible option has improved. Mr. Speaker, I return to my point about our common humanity. As I have said, the pandemic has shown the strength and depth of our community bonds as people reached out to those around them and blessed their neighbors and helped the vulnerable. But there is a particular group of vulnerable people who are not afforded the same protection that other citizens have. These are the stateless people living in Singapore. They don't vote, but they too need a voice in Parliament. Many have grown up in Singapore, and many were even born in Singapore. They live here, work here, and have families here. Yet, because their parents failed to register their birth at the time of their birth, some are denied citizenship and live their lives as stateless people. This impacts them in their daily life, as some struggle to open bank accounts, buy or rent houses, and even find a job. Such difficulties present a very real challenge for them. It leaves them in the lurch and vulnerable. Today, I have spoken a lot of what it means to be Singaporean. I believe giving stateless people living in Singapore citizenship, or at least PR status, would go a long way in giving them something to be rooted in, the identity of being a citizen. Allow me to conclude, Mr. Speaker. This pandemic has brought the best out of Singapore. We have something precious here in Singapore. First and foremost, our people. Secondly, our government working with the people like a formidable aerobatics team weathering the storm in tight formation. The pandemic has not deterred Singapore's determination to build a better future for our children. The Jewel still stands at Changi Airport. Olive trees still grow on the equator at Gardens by the Bay. And we are not done turning a mudflat into a thriving metropolis. And inch by inch, yard by yard, we strive in this house and out there in the streets to become a more united country, regardless of race. And that is a future worth fighting for.